In this short video, we are going to demonstrate how easy it is to create a standalone FHIR Data Repository using the HealthLX interoperability platform. We know the challenges healthcare payers are faced with when it comes to meeting the ONC Cures Act mandates for exchanging clinical data effectively. We'll show you how easy it is to add a patient resource to the repository, update it with an observation resource, and query the results in just minutes. By leveraging our reusable building blocks and underlying process logic, you can configure workflows without the need to replace legacy systems, which is a major time saver. So let's dive in. We now have a new flow, and you can see on the message that it was created successfully. We now need to create our clinical data repository. This is where all our data is actually stored. So we drag that onto the canvas, place it where we would like to have it, and then we examine the settings. Under the covers, we use MongoDB, and we need to change the location of the MongoDB server. So we edit the settings, replace localhost with the correct IP address of the actual database server. All our components are container-based. So we have to use an absolute IP address here for this connection. Now we want to add a RESTful service and a couple of control components. So we search for our components in the list of actions and we drag on the document API component. This basically creates a RESTful service for us, but we need to hook it up to the functions within the clinical data repository. We want to make sure that the FHIR requests are being processed, so we add a component that validates the type of incoming document, and we connect the post request from our REST service to the resolver, and we take the FHIR output and connect that to the create input of our clinical data repository. We want to do the same for the put request. The put request will be connected to the clinical document resolver. This makes sure we only take the FHIR output from any input documents that come in, and we connect that to the update function. We're going to ignore the other output types for now. This gives us the ability to put data into the repository, but now we need to be able to get the results. So we connect the get function to the data repository, and we connect the output from our clinical data repository to the response from our REST API service. That makes sure that the response goes back to where it originally came from. So our FHIR server is now ready, and we can deploy it to the HealthLX platform core. We get a notification that the flow is being deployed, which takes a few seconds, and then we get another notification that the flow has been deployed successfully. So we built our flow and deployed it successfully. What we're going to do now is we're going to switch to the Postman application, which will enable us to actually send FHIR requests to the FHIR server that we just deployed, and actually query it to see the results to show that the data is actually in the FHIR repository. So we're going to get the patient data from the FHIR repository. Hopefully it's going to be empty. You can see here the URL we're going to use, API patient, retrieve all of the patient data. And we set one header property to make sure we're requesting FHIR JSON format and version 4.0. Let's click the send button, wait for the response to come back, and here we can see it's returned 0 records as we expect. So let's call the create patient API. It's basically the same. We make sure it's set to JSON FHIR format 4.0, and we're going to post some data to it. Now this is our sample patient, Betty Davis, that we're going to use for creating this. We've got some information in there, such as name, contact information, address, gender, birthday, etc. So we now click send. This will post data to our FHIR server, and we wait for the response. We get the response back. We see a 202 accepted, so this is the correct response type. So now we do a get patients again. The last result is still there, it was empty. We just click send on this request, and now we see that we get our patient. Here we go, it's Betty Davis. We see that it's persisted all of the demographic information, so we can see that that's worked perfectly. So we have our patient data. What we need to do now is we're going to add an observation, which is another resource type that can be added to a patient. For this we need to get the ID that was created when Betty Davis was added to our FHIR repository. So we copy this ID and we switch to the create observation REST service. We need to look, we see here that we've got an observation resource type. It's got some observation information in there, including laboratory data, LOINC codes, etc. And we need to update the patient reference ID with the one we just copied, because this observation will be added to Betty Davis patient. We click send, it's a post request, we wait for it to complete, and there we have it. Last step is to get the patient, all of the patient data. For this we need the ID we just copied when we added Betty Davis. We put this into the URL. You see we do $everything on the URL and we send the request. So now we see a resource bundle come back. We see a patient resource type, which is great. So the patient data is there. We have Betty Davis. If we scroll down, we'll see another resource type, which in this case is the observation that we just added to Betty Davis. So there we go. We've added a patient and we've added an observation. So there we have it. In just a few minutes, we created a standalone FHIR Data Repository and deployed it to the HealthLex platform. We checked the repository was indeed empty and then created a patient record for Betty Davis. We saw that this record was successfully persisted, so we added an observation resource to Betty's patient record. And we queried the repository to retrieve all the information we had specifically on Betty. Why not reach out to us to explore how your organization can use a FHIR-based solution for clinical data sharing that is scalable, configurable, and secure? Email us at info@healthalex.com. Thank you for watching.